show up here. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. This is just in the last minute, but I thought, I better do a Facebook Live because Dr. Robert Doe's story is so interesting. We are right here at the Long Beach, and I hope you can hear us right. Dr. Robert Doe, he's an MD, and he's a newly minted Isaiah 19 advisor. Actually, I would say you have been to Kurdistan for 31 times, mostly for medical missions, so he knows a lot about that region, the history from a biblical point of view and also from natural point of view. So we have a few questions for you today, Dr. Doe.
Great honor to be here and to answer your questions as best I can.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you know about Isaiah 19. Can you tell us what your understanding of Isaiah 19 is?
Yeah, Isaiah 19 is a beautiful passage that basically says that at the end of the story, Egypt, Israel, and Assyria will be one. Different explanations of their role. One's a blessing, one's an inheritance, one is the handwork. But nonetheless, there are three nations that come linked together in the time probably of the millennial kingdom, most likely is what it's referring to.
It says three countries, Israel, Egypt, and
Assyria, which today is smaller than it once was. The area of Assyria today would most likely be the area known as the Nineveh Plain. So it runs from Mosul currently over into the Kurdish area. That's kind of the main area of the Isaiah people, or the group of people that are known as Assyrians. And the interesting thing about the Assyrian people is that they were the first mass conversion to Christianity in the story after Pentecost.
2,000 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, so the descendants of those people who become saved at the Pentecost, they lived in that region.
And they still live there today.
So what kind of language do they speak?
They speak Assyrian, the original language. Yeah, and their Bible is in Assyrian.
When you say Assyrian, we understand it as, okay, are they Hebrew or are they Aramaic or what are they?
It's a language of its own. I don't honestly have the linguistic background to know whether it's related to a Arabic/Hebrew, because that's one type of language group, whereas the Indo-European language, which is Farsi and Kurdish, is a different language group. So I honestly can't answer that one.
So why do you think everyday Christians should care about this passage, this Isaiah 19 passage?
Well, it appears that at the end of this story that region is going to be a very critical and important ruling region over the earth. So it's in the preparation of that region becoming to its full potential that we potentially see the full potential of our King on earth.
So you're saying that to fulfill the end time prophecy, for all the blessings to flow from that region
to the rest of the nations.
To the rest of the nations, the revival of that region is a key point.
Yes, it is.
So it's something that we have to do whether we like it or not.
I would say that's a good point.
Whether we understand or not.
That's right.
So how important is that region related to Israel?
Well, it's interesting that if you look at Old Testament and New Testament history, that the nation of Israel and the Messiah that came from Israel are totally connected to Assyria and Egypt as well. Because when God called Abram, who became Abraham, and sent him to Canaan, he didn't get to stay there very long. He ended up having to end up in Egypt. And then when his descendants, meaning Jacob, were in the land of Canaan, the famine came. Joseph was sent ahead, and in that sending ahead, Joseph brought the 70 of his family to Egypt. And out of those 70 individuals, more than 2 million Jewish people were birthed. So it was an incubator for the Jewish nation, who then came out through the Exodus to inhabit the current land of Israel today. And then in the second phase of the story, you have the sin and the rejection of God by first the northern kingdom. And so the northern kingdom was exiled under the time of the Assyrian king. And that exile took them to the land between, at that time, Nineveh, modern-day Mosul, all the way into the Kurdish lands and into even a little bit into Iran, in the area of the Kurdish people of Iran, probably even up into Turkey a little bit in the Kurdish lands of Turkey. So that region was known as Assyria at that time, that whole broader region. The Assyrian Empire at its peak went all the way from Egypt all the way to India. Wow. So it was a very big land at that time, but the exiles were taken into the land of the Kurds. And if you go to the Kurdish region now, there's all kinds of remnants of old Jewish villages all through the Kurdish land. But 100% pretty much of all the known Jewish people made Aliyah in the 1940s, 50s, and went to the new nation of Israel. So there's no active Jewish villages anymore. But the Kurdish people have intermarried throughout the generations, and a large percentage of the Kurdish people have Jewish blood.
So you're seeing almost 50%.
I wouldn't be able to guess, but I think it's a fairly significant proportion.
So we understand Egypt has been used in the history to be the womb,
right,
actually and to supply Israel in times of trouble.
And then the second is that during the exile, the Assyrian region became a womb for the exiles, who then under Darius the Mede and then eventually Cyrus the Great, so that was both a Median king and a Persian king, they sent the exiles back to rebuild Israel and Jerusalem, and the temple was replanted. So in both cases there was a seed of Jewish story planted in Egypt and a seed of the Jewish story planted in Assyria, modern day northeast Iraq, that then blessed Israel and was released.
So it sounds like what happened in the history. Those regions actually, they blessed the Jews.
That's right.
So this is going to repeat in the future.
Right.
When we go to help to build this land, to revive this land, bring gospel, bring support. This in turn in the end times will become the shelter per se, or like a Goshen for Abraham.
That's right.
Place. Some people call it the sheep nation. In other words, the nations would protect Israel.
Right.
So in essence, you are saying, so the preparation work we are doing right now actually is part of helping Israel, or a crucial part for the future.
In a sense, we're touching those who blessed Israel. And the promises that God gave to Abram was that anyone who will harm you, I will harm. Anyone who blesses you, I will bless. So I see the Kurdish people, the Assyrian people, as due a blessing from God, because they, and as well as Cyrus the Great, the Persian, was used by God to bless the exiles to return and to rebuild the nation.
What is a Dew? It's a D-E-W. The
Jews, right?
The Jews. So what kind of work can we do now for the region of, say, Egypt or Assyria?
Well, when you actually go into those regions, I don't know as much about Egypt except secondhand, but I have a number of friends who are Egyptian doctors and who travel in and out of Egypt. And the stories I hear about how God is blessing the church, even under persecution. The church is persecuted in Egypt, but it's growing, and Muslims are converting. And in the same thing in the region of the northeast of Iraq, you see an amazing openness to Jesus Christ in those regions. And if we look at history and we compare the story of Korea to the story of northeast Iraq, I think you'll see there's a similarity. At the end of World War II, the Marshall Plan in MacArthur said, look, send me your missionaries to Japan. Send me your missionaries to Korea. But for some reason, they went to Korea more than Japan.
That's right.
And Korea became an amazing, it was one of the poorest lands in the earth, and then now one of the most prosperous with a very high proportion of Christians. I see the same opportunity in that northeast section of the Assyrian and Kurdish region, where there's an opportunity for the missionaries to go, especially if our government would get behind like they did in the 1950s, and push the church and the business of America to go into those regions, both Egypt and Assyria, and the Kurdish region. And I believe we would see an outcome similar to what happened in Korea.
Yeah. We were in Egypt this April, and honestly, before I went, I actually gave up on the Middle East. Honestly, I'm like a lot of Christians. Although I've been supporting and helping the mission works in the Middle East since 2005, but I feel like my heart gave up, especially after 9/11. I'm thinking, there's no hope in the Muslim world there. But this April, when I went to Egypt, within 2 days, I changed my theology. Because I heard firsthand from the Christians there, such as Manah, such as Hamas, now they are part of our Isaiah 19. They told us the Lord prepared them since many years ago for the road of Isaiah 19, which is to prepare for the revival of the gospel for that land. And it will start from Cairo throughout Egypt to Saudi Arabia to Lebanon, all the way going through Assyria back to Jerusalem. And this is her map, and I was so excited. And when I was in Egypt, I saw the sign of revival, not only spiritually, but also you can see in the marketplace. They have built a lot of new buildings, and they said this only happened in the last year and a half, ever since President Trump took office. The financial world, they were confident of the recovery. They're willing to come and invest money in Egypt, the market. And as a result, you see so many new buildings taking place. And the people now, for the first time, can think of maybe owning a place. So I'm very happy to see that. So are you saying that the similar thing that you think is happening in Assyria?
Well, in the area of the Kurds in particular, which is the land between Nineveh and the Iranian border and the Turkish border, that area had already begun to see that kind of prosperity and was really encouraged through American protection after the no-fly zone, after the 2003 Gulf War. But then recently there's been a fear by the Kurdish people that the American government is not going to support them anymore, that they're more in line with Baghdad, Turkey, and because of that, the investment is pulled back substantially. What you would have seen 5 years ago, building after building after building was being constructed. It looks like Dubai. It was pronounced over that city of Erbil that it would be the next Dubai. But then all of a sudden everything stopped after central Baghdad, with a lot of help from Iranian militia, came and took over the city of Kirkuk.
Wow.
And then basically shut down the economy of that region. And it's sitting in limbo right now, that region.
So we need to pray that there will be peace and stability in the region, and pray the Iraqi government can stand strong and protect the Kurdistan, and so people will return to continue the investment. Can you tell us, Dr. Doe, what's your personal story with Kurdistan?
Yeah, back in 2005, I just went out of a pull from the Lord to go see that region, to go to Iraq, and was accompanying a missionary preacher who was going there for the second time. And in that moment, I just assumed typical medical mission. That would be village health care, a couple of bags of medicine, set up some tables, help people, and go home. But I ended up instead doing a visit to the Director of Health. In that country, the Directorate of Health runs the healthcare system for the whole region. So over 2 million people were under the care of this one individual that I met, and was invited to teach family medicine. Found that they were open to the fact that we were Christians and not restricting us from expressing who we are. So we came back and taught family medicine, began to try to develop a clinic with them, learned that we needed to have a little bit more engagement with that clinic in the sense of setting rules and parameters for that clinic. And then each time we'd get close to setting up that clinic, ISIS would happen or financial crisis would happen, and then the government would pull back the financial support of what they were going to do to help us build those clinics. But recently there's a new medical school that we've been connected to through an ex-Kurdish person who happened to be an exile himself in Norway, a physician brought back in by the Prime Minister to start a new medical school. And we've been requested by that doctor and indirectly through the Prime Minister to bring in evangelicals and business from America to establish an American quality healthcare system for them. And in this time, again, another blockage took place, which was the referendum that was held to declare independence. And the Kurds never intended to declare independence. They just wanted to show the will of their people. But everybody reacted really angrily with that. And Turkey, Iran, Baghdad, and even the U.S. pulled back their support, Europe even. And as a result of that, one more time, the project that the Lord had given into our hands was pulled back. And so we're sort of sitting in limbo right now. How can we finish what God began? How do we bring in the support? How does America demonstrate who they think is a Christian nation, even though I don't try to take a side on that story, but the Kurds think we're a Christian nation. So they're looking, why aren't the Christians in America? Why isn't the government America recognizing who we, the Kurds, are? The very people in the Bible that supported Israel, the very people in the Bible that nurtured Israel, the very people that want to recover their identity as a Judeo-Christian mindset. Why aren't you guys helping us anymore? Why'd you pull back?
Wow, well, let's pray, the Lord, that the voice being heard. The Kurdish people are actually descendants of the Judeo bloodline. And we ask God to send people to the right governmental position, give them the voice, and help the government make the right decision to support and give peace and stability to the region, and to revive the land, but also to send more Christians, missionaries, medical missions, and to coordinate all this together. And this is really our end-time mandate, which is said in not only Isaiah 19. Oh, by the way, introducing Isaiah 19, the book by Tom Craig. You know, I didn't know much, actually. Seriously, I didn't know much. About the Isaiah 19, the meaning of it. And then, and then, after I read the book, it gives so much reference, biblical reference. So you can see from almost all the books in the prophet books, you know, and God's heart says in there, which is in His end time, God will use this region again to eventually supply the shelter for the Jews. In the end time, the Jews, I'm so happy to know that they will be the last leg to bring the gospel. But before that happens, we have our job to do, which is to help to revive the region from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Lebanon, all the way to Assyria, back to Jerusalem. And then the Jews will be saved, then the end will come. However, I do want to say though, I think most people, including myself, don't have a lot of understanding yet. We are still learning, and I think revelation is still coming. So, you know, I guess we'll be talking again soon to discuss, you know, what more God has revealed to you and to us that we can share with everybody. Do you have any parting word you want to say?
No, I just, when I look at the Kurdish people and the Assyrian people, because I've worked with both, even the Chaldean people that are there, there's 3 major groups there. 2 of them are Christian. And when I see them, what I see is a flashback to my own ancestors, the patriots, at the time of the revolution in our country.
Where?
In America.
Oh.
So my ancestors were the Pilgrims and the Puritans of New England and fought in the Revolutionary War for the freedom of America from tyranny and improper treatment by others, they thought. And I've never seen a group of people like the Kurds who have that same passion. They want the liberty and the freedom not to be dictated to, but to be able to become who they were created by God to be. And they're so willing to lay down their lives like American patriots would have in those days, willing to lose everything for the cause that they believe in. And here we are, the people that brought freedom to so many nations. I think it's our time to bring freedom for them.
So you said earlier that about 2/3 of them, they actually are the descendants of the Judeo bloodline?
No, the Kurds are descendants of the Medes in the Bible. But because of the exile of the Jewish people into that region, over the generations, there was intermarriage. So the pure bloodline of the Kurd would be the Mede, whereas the pure bloodline of the Iranian would be the Persian. And so those are the two Medo-Persian pieces that brought the Medo-Persian Empire together. But the Jews were put in the middle of it during the exile, and the intermarriage is what brings
so it's
the mix. Yeah, it's a mixture.
They are all mixed. But is it safe to say, though, they are all Abraham's descendants?
Absolutely, all Abraham's descendants.
So Abraham's descendants, God's desire to bring the descendants Abraham, the Ishmael, and Isaac to worship God together.
That's right.
That really is the meat of Isaiah 19, to fulfill God's desire. And God cares to fulfill his covenant with Abraham. So the end time, the big job really is to help God to fulfill his covenant. And so here we are, 21st century. Can you believe it?
It's only been 2,700 years since the Jews were put there in exile. That's just a short time in God's equation, isn't it? And here we are given an opportunity to try to bring some closure to a long story.
Yes. Well, it seems like lately I feel like things happen so very quickly. You know, it's like really connecting people together. Like, you know, we just met not too long ago, and we're finding out we're on the same mission. At a different stage of understanding, but at least now we are linking hands.